Hello, dear friends. This is Cardiac Radio at 11 p.m. Nourishing our souls together. We're studying the book Jesus in the Home by the Spirit author Neio Lucio through Chico Xavier. Let us remember that this book was written in 1949 and it comes to us as a true opportunity to be taught by the Master in an immortal way. As Emmanuel prefaces the book, he repeats to us quite clearly that Neio Lucio, the Spirit author, understands the profound truth of the Master and has dedicated to the new disciples some of the lessons of the Lord, as told within the closest circle of his first apostles and followers. So Jesus continues to speak to disciples of all latitudes. So may his incisive and gentle voice, writing the book of your soul, the renewing lesson we need to face the future, thereby making us active sowers of his infinite love. Such is the greatest happiness to which we can aspire. So welcome, friends. Today we're studying chapter 28. This book contains 50 chapters and 50 immortal lessons for us. In the previous chapter, as we've studied, we've talked about courage as the forgotten gift. As Jesus said, courage to produce enthusiasm and attract good spirits to fulfill our duties in life, right? The day-to-day work. So courage is the forgotten gift. It is through courage that we are able to fulfill our duties without hesitation and without any procrastination, right? Today, chapter 28 is about the heavenly reply. The heavenly reply. He begins, Neio Lucio, describing a passage that includes Bartholomew. You know who Bartholomew was? When you read the book Good News, I know the book is not published yet, but you can listen to the book at Cardiac Radio's YouTube. Go to Good News, and then you listen to chapter 8. It's chapter 8 that we talk about Bartholomew, one of Jesus' disciples. And Neio Lucio says, when Bartholomew asked for an explanation about heaven's answers to people's prayers, Jesus responded to enlighten everyone. An old teacher of the divine commandments was on a mission of heavenly truth, from distant village to distant village, accompanied by his dog. One night, darkness began to fall without him, having determined how many miles separated him from his next destination. Noticing that being alone in the middle of nature was quite frightening, the man prayed for protection from the Eternal Father and continued on his way. When the moonless night finally set in fully, he saw a wide and comfortable-looking hollow by the side of the path. Petting the dog that was following watchfully behind him, the man decided to lie down and sleep. He was just about to settle into the hollow when a dark cloud of voracious flies attacked him all of a sudden, forcing him to continue on his way. The old man continued walking when he came to a deep creek on a stretch where the road forked. A rustic bridge offered a way across it on the main road, and just beyond in the ground looked welcoming, because although it was enveloped in nocturnal darkness, it looked like a broad white sheet. The holy preacher decided to lead his obedient companion to the other bank, but the bridge suddenly gave way, collapsed, and broke into pieces. This is a story that is being told to us by our Master Jesus. The holy preacher decided to lead his obedient companion to the other bank, but the bridge broke. With no other way across, the old man took the other path, and finding a healthy tree full of welcoming branches, he thought about conveniently taking shelter under it, because from the sounds of thunder in the distance, the sky was announcing a storm. The stately tree offered an alluring and safe shelter in its hollow trunk. He was ready to take up refuge there, but a gale began blowing so strongly that the tree came crashing down and split apart. Thus, exposed to the rain, the traveler continued on his way. After approximately 2 miles, he came across an old country house that appeared to have a soft light on inside, and he breathed a sigh of relief. He knocked on the door. The gruff man who answered refused him in no uncertain terms, alleging that the place did not welcome visitors in the middle of the night, and that he was not allowed to take in strangers. He begged and pleaded, but the preacher was forced to continue onwards. He got as comfortable as he could beneath the storm near a small hut. Soon, however, the dog, terrorized by the incessant lightning, ran off yelping, becoming lost in the darkness. Now, alone, the old man wept in anguish, believing that he had been forsaken by God. In the middle of the night, he heard a muffled yelling and cursing, but was unable to tell where it was coming from. Curious, he waited for dawn, and after the sun began to rise in its full splendor, he left his hiding place and found out from some terrible farmers that a band of thieves had pillaged the very same house that he had been turned away from and had killed the people who lived there. A sudden spiritual light bloomed in his mind. He realized that divine goodness had saved him from the evildoers, and that when the howling dog ran off, he had been assured a peaceful night's sleep. When told that he was on the path heading in the opposite direction of where he wanted to go, he retraced his steps in order to get back on the right road. When he got to the broken bridge, a repairman explained to him that the white soil on the other side of the road, was nothing more than a treacherous swampland where many careless travelers had died. The old man gave thanks to the Almighty Father for having saved him, and when he reached the fallen tree, a young boy told him that the seemingly welcoming tree trunk was a well-known wolf's den. Very thankful to the Lord, who had so miraculously helped him, he sought out the hollow where he had tried to rest, and in it he found a nest of poisonous snakes. Offering endless thanks to heaven for the different forms of help that he had been unable to understand at first, he continued onwards, safe and sound, to carry out his work. At this point, In the interesting story, the master gazed a while at Bartholomew and concluded, "The Father always hears our pleas, but we need discernment in order to understand his answers and to put them to the best use." So Jesus told this story as a reply to Bartholomew's question. Are our prayers listened by God? Many people ask this question, right? Yes. But Jesus said, ask and you shall receive, right? In the Gospel according to Spiritism, in one of its last chapters, it's actually chapter 27 of the Gospel according to Spiritism, Kardec reports to us the Spiritist understanding on Jesus' very statement about, but when you want to pray, go into your room and with your door closed, pray to your Father. And then later he says, quite clearly, that you ask and you shall receive. Jesus does not lie to us, does he? No. Does he sugarcoat the scenario of life? No. It's clear that Jesus is telling us that most often than not, we want things that are not appropriate for us. Today, the lesson is about discernment, but also about faith in God. A perfect balance, a balance of the adult in us. Only the adult inside of us can discern. There was a time in humankind history when we were constantly gravitating to gurus. And there are people who still do that. Priests, mediums, asking for answers. There are people who barely know if they should have a child, not have a child. They have to constantly ask somebody about this instead of God. And Jesus is teaching us, ask God and trust. But discern about the answers of God. Only the adult can do this. A child cannot do this. But the adult inside of us. Many people around the world are still little children in adult bodies. And we're not saying this as a judgmental statement. And you can ponder when the child in us is clearly behaving in our daily lives. Because when the child is up in the adult, it's all about I want, I need. I want and I need. I go to work, I want people's attentions. I need people's consideration. I want people's appreciation. I need people's understanding. That's the child inside of us. No wonder the world is so complicated. Because everyone's child is mingling and not necessarily getting along. But it takes the adult, logical, rational, factual, to ponder everything and to understand. When Jesus proposes this lesson to Bartholomew, he's saying, yes, God answers, not only listens, but answers to our prayers. But it is on us to discern the answer, to understand. In the book Thought and Life, which is a summary of 30 chapters regarding how we can succeed in a reincarnation, in that book, Emmanuel through Chico Xavier, brings to us in chapter 10 the importance of understanding. Without understanding, we can poorly progress. We need to understand ourselves first, and then life. Understanding ourselves, self-knowledge, which is vital. According to the Spirit's book by Allan Kardec, when Kardec asked the spirits, what can I do to avoid mistakes and to progress steadily? They answered, self-knowledge. But how much do we know of ourselves? So let us ask a self-assessment question. Is our child constantly present, the inner child? It could be a happy child, joyful, bringing joy to everybody. But it could be a needy one. And many people have needy children inside of them, really trying to manipulate scenarios. What do? How do we go from allowing the inner, sensitive, rebellious kid, the needy kid inside of us, to be consoled and allow the adult to take place? We need to console our inner child. How? This is one exercise that we can do today. Many people are searching for somebody else's love. But if we have God's love, we have everything. So I need to repeat to myself daily. This is an exercise, like physical therapy for the soul. Physical therapy, but for the soul. And I'm using a term, of course, just to say exercise for the soul. Telling ourselves, I am loved by God, and that suffices. I am loved by God, and that suffices. I'm loved by God, and that suffices. Put your hand close to your heart chakra and tell yourself, I love God, and I am loved by God, and that suffices. Everything else is an exercise of that love for God. I no longer seek to be loved. I no longer look forward to being appreciated, to being highly considered by people. I no longer need gurus in our lives. The only master that was given to us to be followed through is Jesus. And yet, he doesn't say, I am at the end of your goal. He says, I am the pathway, the path to God. To God. And I'm pointing up, not necessarily God is up, right? Because God is everywhere, right? It's that song, G-O-D, God is here. G-O-D, God is everywhere, right? G-O-D, God is here. G-O-D, God is everywhere. God is everywhere. And is here as well. Everywhere. There's nowhere where God is not. Go to chapter 1 of the Spirit's book by Allan Kardec, and we will hear the foundation of it all. About the attributes of God. God is omnipresent, meaning everywhere. Omniscient, knows everything. And omnipotent, God has the whole power. The sole power, the most powerful of all, God. So if you think that your boss rules over you, no. You respect your boss, but above your boss, there's God. So don't be afraid of your boss, because your boss is just like you. Your boss needs help from God just like you. Has a guardian angel just like you. Your family members, don't be afraid of them, because they also have their guardian angels and they are loved by God equally. We don't need to clash with anyone. I don't need to manipulate people. Why? Because God is taking care of everybody. But God doesn't manipulate anybody. He lets us free to do what we need to do. So when you see something that is outrageous, let us remember, God knows of it and is allowing, not necessarily agreeing, but allowing this person to take that action. Why? Why? I don't know. But as Emmanuel usually says, in evil itself, there is a remedy. We await. We await for the remedy to surface from the very waters of ignorance. Sooner or later, everything is going to come up. Look at Master Jesus. God sent Jesus here and allowed him to return, though in that way. Why? Because God is unfair? That's our short-sighted conclusion. But for those who can see ahead, the martyrdom of the Christ, since today is Ash Day, many people are meditating on the martyrdom. They are doing their penitence, not that we in Spiritism do, but we think about it. We think about the whole sacrifice of our Master, and we ponder. And that's a good exercise to boost discernment. Can we already see at the end of the tunnel and see light? Bartholomew is like us. Like us in the sense, in the world, the people who are troubled and are not yet seeing how we're loved by God. So he asks Jesus, how am I? Listen to God. How does God listen to me? And Jesus, says Neio Lucio, to answer to the Bartholomew inside of all of us, he's giving a lesson saying, yes, there will be twists and turns that you won't understand at first. But if you stay faithful, loyal, and calm, when daylight comes, you will understand it. So in the story of Jesus, we see the symbolism representing in the darkest hours, dawn, right? But almost reaching daylight, but the darkest hours. In the darkest hours of our life, what are the darkest hours? When financial restrictions happen, diseases, death of loved ones, conflicts inside of all of us, etc., etc., etc. There are so many scenarios. The darkest hours, we pray, asking for a solution, and we don't usually see immediate response from God, because we expect that God is going to hold us in his arms and take us away from the school of life. But God is holding us in his arms, giving us life, sustaining our lives, and yet allowing us to mature. We need the experience. But if we stay calm and resigned, we will see daylight. And when day comes, we will be given the opportunity to assess what we've been through and recognize the blessings. Question for us: do you already recognize? Do we already recognize the blessings in disguise in our lives? Or are we still like people 2,000 years ago, concluding that God loves us when we have everything in place? Oh, that person is loved by God. They are famous. They are rich, beautiful, healthy, beautiful, and powerful. Poor us when we take that conclusion, thinking that the appearances and the passing things are actual benefits. Because when Chico Xavier was born, he was born in the city of nowhere. Poor, like Jesus. Our master, the governor, came in a form that to date we would probably not recognize the Messiah. Because we still believe in the famous, the powerful. We still believe in positions of power. We still believe in money. We still believe in beauty and health. As the ancient Romans, who believed that the gods were giving them advantages, favoring them versus others. Jesus came to say, not really. That's why he went to the mount and gave us the Beatitudes. To say, no, when you're sick, you're not being punished. When you're poor, you're not being punished. When you are not respected by society because of whatever condition, you are not being punished. And then we learn in the gospel according to Spiritism, step by step, blessed are the afflicted. Chapter 5, the longest of the whole book. In that book, we find blessed are the afflicted, meaning blessed are those who are coming to terms with their consciences in this life, expiating, versus others who are still sowing the discord, sowing the separation, sowing the problems, using the apparent benefits that they are given. Where are we in that regard? Where is our discernment? As Jesus says, the Father always, he doesn't say sometimes, often, quite often. He says, always hears our pleas. But we need discernment. What surprises me, I have to confess, when I read this text, is when Jesus includes himself. He includes himself in the very take-home message. This is humility. He's a master that is really completely coherent. He includes himself. We need discernment. He doesn't say you. He says we need discernment in order to understand God's answers and put them to the best use. But you observe one thing. He used the word Father. He didn't say about a God out there. He is the one that brought God so close to us that we can feel the providence of God. It's beyond words. So we need to boost discernment. How do we do this? It's a prefrontal cortex activity. We need to ponder, reflect daily. That's why meditation is so important. That's why prayers and visualizations is so important. Daily reflections. We need to stop without anybody else. Maybe in the company of a flower or a plant or a dog or a cat, a pet, or in nature or at home or at work during a break. Meditate and think, wow, thank God that I am given the conditions that I have now. We don't want to be ungrateful children, cursing the temporary limitations that are presented to us. We need to seek the good. Understanding is about seeking the good because God only provides the good. Says Emmanuel in chapter 10, seek the good, make an effort to find the good everywhere and in everyone. Feel it, he says. Feel it. Visualize it. And work on it. So let's say you were at work waiting for a promotion. It didn't come. Instead, you were fired. You go home puzzled, thinking, oh, I'm unlucky. Luck doesn't exist. Nothing is by chance. If you're going through that experience, there is a reason. First chapter of this book, Paul and Stephen. Jochebed, the father of Abigail and Stephen, thought like this, that he was unlucky, that he was being mistreated, that life was not fair because the Romans were taking away his lands, his things, his wife has already passed away. Not satisfied, not resigned, not calm. He starts some form of madness and goes after the questor, demanding justice. What happens? A tragic scenario. Reading the book. 3 years ago, in 2006, this was the first book we started at Cardiac Radio every day. This was the beginning of it all. And there you're gonna see either YouTube or Facebook. You can rescue the whole thing, or in SoundCloud. You can hear or watch the very explanations. He thought that life was not fair. He started demanding like a child, I want my lands. I need respect. I need appreciation. And what he received was the response of another kid who was way more spoiled, unfair, unjust. The end of this story is not beautiful. Jochebed dies tragically. He's murdered in the injustices of the time. We don't want to go there. We don't want to demand. What do we want to do? Understand. Always thinking, if this is happening, God is allowing me to go through this. That's what Stephen, the son of Jochebed, told him, Father. Mom always taught us, like in the scriptures. There is a reason why God allows us to go through. Let us just accept. That's the nature of things. Let us believe in God first, but we don't place God as center stage in our lives. We're full of whims because we were conditioned by many lives to do what we want and not to do what God wants. But in this life, this is it. If we have a wish today, is may I have greater discernment to fulfill God's will and understand God's will. Understand God's will as a mother, as a father, as a good worker, as a good family member, and not somebody who is constantly teasing the odds of life to see what happens next. A rebellious kid. And life one day is going to say this is it, like it did to Joshadep. Tonight, we're being asked by Jesus to have complete faith in God and use our discernment to understand God's designs. I know this saying seems to be so common sense, but it's probably the hardest thing for us to do. How can we practice it? By feeling God's love. Breathe in. Feel God's sustenance in your life. Breathe out, surrendering to God. I breathe in and I feel God's providence giving me life. I breathe out and I let go of my resistances. I breathe in. I feel the love that comes from God enveloping me completely, and I breathe out, feeling this unbreakable connection with God. And I say, God, you know what I'm going through. I open my heart to you, and I know you hear me. Just make me understand and discern so I can fulfill your will and understand your designs. Let me stay at peace, calm, resigned. In the very chapter 5 of this book, when the spirits say that calm and resignation are the antidotes to madness and suicide, they are recommending to us the calmness that we need in life. For many lives, including this one, we have been desperate. We have been doubtful, but no longer. Now we know. Now we feel. Now we visualize. Everything is okay. Everything shall pass, as Mother Mary used to say. And it passes. Just to give us a highlight, I read this story the other day in a video. In a room where people used to pray, there were 4 candles. And one of the candles said to the other candles, my name is Faith, but people don't believe in me, so I'm going to turn myself off. And it did. The other one was courage. It was blown away. Love was the 3rd candle, and the 3rd candle said, people don't believe in me. It's not worthwhile. A wind came up and blew it away. And when the last candle was still burning, a little child came in. And that child said, please, 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 don't allow yourself to be blown away. I'm in the dark. Please stay lighted up because I need you. And this light, the light of the candle, stayed up and said, don't worry, because with my light, we can light up the other ones back again. It was then that the candle of hope was able to light up all the other candles again. So friends, hope is part of the lessons of the good news. Let us never lose hope and keep it lighted up inside of us as we boost our discernment to understand and feel God closely to us. Friends, this is it for today. Let us stay with God in the next 24 hours, exercising this complete trust in God and His designs. Thank you, friends. Until tomorrow, God willing.